you test your
How?
Dolby Atmos home theater? So how do you
How?
test your Dolby Atmos home theater? I know in the past I've taken a movie that I've seen a bunch of times, pop it in my Blu-ray player, fast forward to the scene in question, and I play it and I listen for whatever's happening up top and how it relates to what's happening on screen and what's going on in the ear level speakers. But that's really not the best way to do it, because in a movie, well, we all know Dolby Atmos scenes are, few and far between, and they happen so fast. Like, the movement of the sounds is so fast, it's very hard to pick up on exactly where that is supposed to be as it relates to what's happening on screen. Like, do we have a visual representation supposed to be as it relates to what's happening on screen? Like,
I think Techno Dad's been earwigging on some of my live videos. Because otherwise he would have mentioned this long ago. That's okay, but he picks up on it. He's picking up on it like other people are picking up on it. Because sometimes the visual image and such, and the continuity, the sound continuity, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? It doesn't seem to match. It's like what's happening there overhead is in a different era, different space of time or whatever in the movie. It's like it's out of sync, The continuity doesn't match. Continuity. I call it sound continuity.
Visual representation to go along with the audio? And the answer to that is no, unless, of course, you have a Trinov where you have their Atmos viewer, but...
No, you don't need a Trinov, you don't really need a Storm Audio. In fact, you don't really need any receiver because, I'm kind of baffled as why sound editors or supervising sound editors, I think it's supervising, that they have to make sure everything, because they're supervising, aren't they? They have to make sure everything is in place. And it's just a mess. I mean, like Top Gun Maverick, that's just so overrated. That shouldn't even have won. That movie should not deserve to win an award. Because a lot of it just doesn't seem to match. It's just a load of random throw sound effects in there. And if you think about it, some sound objects or what happening, they probably just wouldn't make that sound in that sort of space of 3D in reality. Certain things like that might give something away. It might have a bit of an echo in the sound effect, and when you look at the scene, it's like, well, how's that possible? Because I can't see any mountains around this scene for that to echo. It's just not possible. It just wouldn't echo. It's like you get all these sound effects in Star Wars movies, all this boom, and a bit of a kind of like echoey effect. And I'm thinking, how the bloody hell can that echo in a vacuum? Not, there's nothing there for sound to, but an echo, come on, that's stretching it a bit, isn't it? So I'm thinking, where's the asteroids for that echo to bounce, much less mountains? Oh dear.
But, who's got $16,000 to $30,000 just sitting around to buy a processor? I know some of you do, which is awesome. Good for you, but majority of people just do not. And that is why we created the torture test section in the Spatial Audio Calibration Toolkit. The torture test section comprises of 6 Dolby Atmos tracks to go along with the full 160 Dolby Atmos tracks we created for the Spatial Audio Calibration Toolkit. If you want 160 Dolby Atmos tracks,
160. My flipping Superstar 360 FM there could do 360 channels or 360 tracks. Come on, 160. Oh, really? That's
created for the spatial audio calibration.
That's like having an EQ. All these EQ things are just a load of rubbish. They're okay. They're okay as long as you know how to use it. But really, to me, it's just not enough. It's just not enough frequency band. They need at least a parametric EQ, and there needs to be at least about 20,000 PEQ filters per channel. How long is a piece of string, you know? So what am I going to do? Put, well, let's say a Behringer FBQ. You can dial in frequencies. I haven't done the count on how many frequencies you can dial in. So if you were to have a series of, if you can buy them cheap as well, that's also a factor. Or if you know someone that knows a little bit more about electrical engineering and such, and can sort of like say, well, yeah, it's possible we can make a modification to this board, because the FBQ's got 20 band on channel A, 20 band on channel B, okay? And so if you were to output channel A into, and you can daisy chain it, output, you know, so you add 40 channels. That's then basic to say, like a basic 40 channel CB radio then. Okay. But you can only dial in so many frequencies still. When you go through the dial, you go from 20 hertz and then turn the dial and it goes to the next frequency and the next and the next and so on. And those frequencies, they matter. As well as you can adjust the Q bandwidth. The Q bandwidth is kind of like that. So you can have it very narrow, very, very narrow on an FBQ. And then you can adjust it to go a bit wide, so it goes over the neighbouring frequency. You analyse the frequency scale and think, well, I think here I could get away with widening the Q bandwidth out and can bring a multitude of these frequencies down. But when you get to something complex, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is a bit all over the place, it's a bit erratic, and then you've got to analyse it several times over to see whether it might not be an error, because you've got so many frequencies with a dip of peaks, and it looks very scattered, bit messy, and you can't just widen the Q bandwidth out and then lower it down. No, you got to kind of go in now and address it with individual frequency adjusting, because not every speaker is going to be perfect. If you analyze it close up, it's going to have dips and peaks in it. You know, there might be, depending on the diaphragm, depending on the compression driver. Hang on, let's bear up to. See, bear's the key. See, wonder what. Look. There's the techno. So I wonder if bear's into techno. Hasn't passed the techno test. So yeah, you need a way to make a modification on FBQ, so then you can program just about every frequency on an FBQ and then program it into the frequency bands, but it'll only go up to 40, but it needs to be mod hacked or something, so you can utilize the entire frequency bands on it, and then that will probably be a whole lot more, I guess, than maybe I don't know, I read a rumor somewhere, Odyssey, it had somewhere in the range of PEQ or filters somewhere like 200. I think it was. I read somewhere so it had like 200 PEQ filters per channel. So I'm not sure what the Dirac, enemy mine, Diracs reclaiming squatter rights to the equalizing, but we gave them war. And then you got the Genesis with the Ark of the Covenant, so you open up the, to see what EQ filters it's got inside, and then your face starts melting. Or your ears. I just wonder how many PEQ filters those things have got. I haven't tested or tried the Dirac to see, to see how many PEQ filter that thing's got. I practically almost gave up using the thing because I thought it's something I won't use, because my system, I would do my equalizing afterwards. I do it after my B chain, so it'd be pretty useless to me. So if I were to use any equalizing on it to do overheads, whatever, it's going to mess up the equalizing on the Pro Logic decoder, because the decoder that has got to look at a frequency response that's flat, in level, phase, and gain level, etc., and polarity, etc. It's got to look at that signal, and if it's got all something that's, all the EQ bands are all over the place, the sound's going to be it's going to be a bit of a jumble. It wouldn't get precise pinpoint overhead on over here, and here, with the dog channels that I have in between the on the ceiling. Yeah.
Toolkit. If you want to get your hands on them, we are shipping. Spatialcd.com. Make sure you pick yours up today. So the torture test section in the SACT, but it's going to sound pretty good, because I play this upstairs in my living room setup, and I already know it's not going to sound good, and it kind of doesn't because of the way my living room is shaped. However, in the studio here, I know when I play this file, it's going to sound pretty good, because this is where, I made these files, but at the same time, it has a better room shape. My speaker boundary is more in line with the Dolby Atmos renderer, so I know it's going to sound good. But there still is room for improvement, and I can hear that whenever an object flies at the top of the room and goes forward or back or left or right or whatever the situation is.
Has this guy
adding middle heights to my setup here in the studio?
Has this guy tried using a Pro Logic, like what I'm doing? Add on some Pro Logic decoders to the height channels, yeah, and then in the mix, what you do, you add on so many tracks and that, and then you have certain ones where you at a certain point in the cue, the timing, you invert the signal specifically while everything else is still playing up there, and you put an inverted reverse polarity sort of thing on the signal, so it steers into a different direction and then gets encoded, of course, in the mix. But you need a monitor so all right, that sound's going below me. Oh, that's cool. Because all this thing putting sound up there on the ceiling, that's been done. That's already been done. Well, it might have been done differently decades ago. 1969, I Station Zebra, the local downtown, the Cinerama 70mm. Before my time, I was too young then, but I understand the principle. And I heard Star Wars in that same auditorium in 35 in Dolby Stereo in 1978, February. As well as a few other movies I might have seen. They might have had 4-track or some sort of other optical multi sort of thing, because there's so many other different types of multi 35 optical soundtrack that have come around and didn't stay around long because they got phased out because of probably cost or technicalities or such. But anyway, UCI Tower Park, that used experimental overhead surround since 1989. And I was there when I was there then. And when I left, I occasionally went back, see a few other movies, catch one in Dolby SR.
The studio will actually give me better atmos experience. So that is definitely one thing will actually give me better atmos experience. So
bloody every time you say atmos, oh, crikey. You see Dolby Labs, you know, it's like someone said, I think Dolby Labs are trying to keep Atmos relevant. Was it the re-recording mixer, Gary Summers?
So that is definitely one thing that you're going to have to remember when you're playing this. Like, if you have obstacles or your room is weirdly shaped, remember when you're playing this. Like, if you have obstacles or your room is weirdly shaped or you can't put your height speakers in the right locations, you will notice every little. You can't put your height speakers in the right locations. You will.
Can't put your height speakers. Oh, right. So, yeah, because you got like height and you got top layer. So that's kind of like height is here and the top layer is a little bit higher up. Isn't it? I don't know if that makes any difference. If you're going to notice any damn difference in that sort of positioning of the sound. I don't think so. My personal opinion. I'm using the height channels, the top layers. I'm using the height ones on the floor at the moment because I can't find any of JBL speakers to to match to fit onto the ceiling. But what I've noticed, what's going on with the height layer, as well as the top layer, the sound steering and the repositioning and such. Yeah, I'll get into that later. I'll get into that maybe in another live video. Because it is, to me, it seems a bit hokey on Air Force One. It seems a little bit hokey. It's like, it's almost like a gimmick because it's not a proper, Atmos mix. Because they would have to spend millions, literally millions, and then have depending on how many speaker layout or whatever they got in a small room. Because if I could put in, if I want to, I could put in at least 300 channels or 400 or 500 channels in my room. That's not impossible. All it is that then you have to scale down the size of the loudspeaker. So I'll probably use maybe a JBL Control 1. And I would scale it back down to that. And so that's a bit of a compromise. To scale down the scale of the set, and to engineer it and get it back to sounding like, and that's like, well, I could probably go with, I'd have to do a count. I'd have to measure the size, how many of those I can put on the ceiling. And I mean literally, plastered. But then I've got to look at the cost versus doing something DIY and having a MDF false ceiling put up and then having the holes cut in and so forth, and then having I'll probably go with something like coaxial drivers. So they got the bass driver and the high range there. So otherwise, a two-way. Well, they are. Coaxial is a two-way. Otherwise, you could have a normal speaker that's just a, its frequency response is going to roll off eventually. And actually, you got to look into that. You could probably look at a speaker driver and look at the X max factor of how far it can move back and forth. You got to work out how much bass response you're going to get roughly, how much you could probably get out of it a little bit more with a little bit of specific bandpass EQ filtering placed in to soften down all the rest of the mid-range, and then say get a bit of bass range out, perceive some of the bass range, and then look at where roughly the high frequency is starting to roll off, and then think, okay, I'll look at all these other things and I could see, okay, a little tweeter here, and you could probably make a sort of modification to the speaker by maybe having a tweeter fitted on like a little stick or something, and just place it slightly in front of where the center is on the bass driver, so it's in position. And you never know, that cost might be a little bit more cheaper than buying a coaxial. So you got to look at the whole cost aspect, as well as maybe the crossover, not the crossover, the speaker again, the where the frequency might roll off at. And when you got multitude, and I mean a cluster, I'm talking a cluster. So if it was this bedroom, I would totally have the whole flipping thing. I'd have speakers literally. And so when it plays any of the high frequency range, even though it's rolling it with REM using the pink noise, and you can narrow the frequency, I would still hear a bit of sound, and it would be flowing down uniformly. Hopefully, that sort of sound should have very little. I imagine it made very little comb filter. It's when you comb your hair.
We'll notice every little thing bad about your setup with this torture test section. So, you've been warned.
Been warned?
With this torture test section. So,
torture?
You've been warned.
I have to report him. He's torturing loudspeakers.
So what we're looking at here is the horizontal.
Well, no, he's not actually torturing loudspeaker. He's torturing amplifiers, or torturing processor to amplifiers or torturing. I don't know what he's torturing, but that's what. I'm just trying to think. Didn't THX come up with something like a torture test, where they were just, I don't know what. Unless they're doing other sort of diabolical things, this is probably like the right stuff. So you test the individuals against the test that they have set up. So diabolical, because you're going into an unknown. Or they will be going into an unknown. The engineers, they mostly stay on the ground because they're probably a little bit more wise, and it's just, have you got someone crazy enough to do this,
Horizontal X's, and basically I'm having the sound travel through the room in the shape of an X. Like if you were to look at the top of the room down, you'd see that the sound is moving as an X. And this is the voice one, and you can see just how slow the voice is moving around the room, and that is key. Now we start off at 0% height, which is around the room, and that is key. And you can see just how slow the voice is moving around the room, and that is key. Now we start off at 0% height, which is moving around the room, and that is key. Now we start off at 0% height, which is, ear level. So you can see visual feedback,
I don't know.
0%
I
height.
don't know. That's so bullshit. Sorry, but I'm calling this bullshit. Because you can't make a sound because it's making them like an object. An object. It's grabbing. I like my cat bear here on the bed. So here's an object. And it's like that's making a sound. Well, this will. And I'm modulating my fingers at the same level. I can increase it and then dissipate and then gradually do it softer. So, yeah, right. You can spare me the bullshit with that because it's so screwy, people just don't believe you. And for which nature cannot be fooled.
Is moving around the room. And
So
that
please spare me the bullshit on that.
Now we start off at 0% height, which is, ear level. So you can see visual feedback.
But it's not his fault.
Dolby Atmos renderer.
Techno's only the messenger. He's only the messenger. This is Dolby Labs' fault. It's so screwy, people just don't believe you. You actually believe that bloody sound, that little thing that moves close to the graphic there on the. That's bullshit.
You can see visual feedback in the form of the level meters. Now we're at 50.
It's like you could put just a few basic speakers in a room. A few basic, say 4 speakers. One above you, one below you. They got to be the same speaker. One to the side and hang on. Let's go now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, let's go 6 speakers. So place one slightly in front of you, one slightly behind, and one to the side, one below and above. And then play pink noise, okay? And how it sounds, and you can modulate the pink noise by adjusting it, the filtering on it, so you can make it sound like very bassy, or you can open it up to full range sound, or you can chop it, put like a crossover filter on it, bandpass, low pass filter, and then bring it all up to the top end so it sounds all it does that. And then you could play a sine wave tone, go through the sine wave tones and listening to how the tones are sounding. But you just can't bring a speaker in this close. It's just not going to work. It's going to be intimidating, intrusive. No one's going to put up with that because it'd be like you're squatting, just as like you see a fly buzzing around, flies, yeah, they're disgusting. But if it was something like a wasp, I try to get the creature out of the window without trying to kill it. If it was a bumblebee, no, that's definitely no. I'm not going to kill a bumblebee. I'll get that bumblebee out the window because the bees are the key. It's not Jar Jar Binks. It's the bees. If the bees go, we go. Everything goes. Everything. So, anyway, so it's like that, but this is just 50% bullshit.
Height. And as you can see, I'm going to pause the video here. You can see in the levels meter. Now this is set up for a 9.1.6 Atmos configuration, but look how many speakers have sound coming out of them. That's 12 right there. 12 discrete channels have sound coming out of them.
Today I'm going to show you the easiest trick to lower your
12 right there. 12 discrete channels have sound coming out of them. There is no other place that you can find this kind of visual feedback to go with the audio that's traveling around your room. And this is exactly why we created this. All right, here's another one. This one's called the Up and Over. And
what? You're trying to say there's no way I can't put pink noise sound or whatever make a I could do that easy through the Denon with the multi-stereo channel mode and put pink noise over, and all I have to do is mute a certain channel. What? Hey. I've done audio mixing at a college 20 years ago, so...
Look at what's happening. You have the sound going from your front left straight up, and it's going to go from your front left height all the way over to your front height right, and then go straight down into your front right main speaker. And this seems okay. I'm sure you're like, oh, well, no big deal, until we get to situations like this. This will activate your right surround speaker, go straight up. So if you have a middle height, it should go straight to your middle height. But if you don't, it'll activate your front height and rear height. Now we're in the middle of the room, up in the top of the ceiling. That's all your height channels activated. And back down to your surround left. So this part is definitely going to trip up some people's home theaters. And I'm going to fast forward to now this part here where it goes from your center channel straight up to the ceiling and then straight all the way back to the back of the room. This one is going to rip up a whole bunch of home theaters as well, including here in the studio. This straight all the way back to the back of the room. This one is going to rip up a whole bunch of home theaters as well, including here in the studio. This also didn't sound the greatest. Again, if I were to add middle heights to the setup here in the studio, I think all these tests...
What's he saying? What's he talking about? Rip? What? Destroy? Crikey. I've had the EQ tuning on my just my side surrounds recently. I've just put a simple bandpass filter in, and so I could maximise bass, play a bit of that, remix, upmix, atmos, height, bloody, what do you call it, bloody Air Force One bloody thing. Oh crikey! I even threw Earthquake at it, and it was handling okay, with the bass easily reaching up to 100 dBc. And it could go just a little bit more if it wanted to, but it's going to piss the neighbours off. But
tests would perform a bit better. Now let's go to my favorite one here, because this is something that really will test out your home theater, and this is diagonals. I'm using the voice one because this one does move slower than the pink noise. And as you can see on screen, it's basically the sound traveling from one speaker to another, and I label the speakers. So right now we're going from front height right to surround back right, a diagonal in your room. And here's another diagonal, surround back right to rear height left. Now we're going rear height left to front left. And it'll do this for every angle in your room. I'm going to fast forward it so we can check out the real magic, which is toward the end. Here's what I'm talking about. Front height left to surround back right. And it's going to go up and now do rear height right to front left. I'm going to pause the video again. And you can see in the level meters, we again have 12 discrete channels that have audio going through them.
12 discrete. 12 discrete. You can see my eyes rolling. I noticed so many sort of like little sound flaws with Air Force One Atmos. Okay. It seemed like sometimes they're sending the same duplicated sound to these height channels as well as other some of the channels are, I think, on the sidewall, because I'm using the pan through, so it could sound could go from that speaker, theoretically. Yeah, there are certain things in it, and I think, plus I could hear like little goofs in the sound mixing, like, oh, I could hear that sound, that sounds like it relates to probably the Scream channels originally, and I think, what's going on here, some of the Jerry Goldsmith score music that plays on it, okay, it sounds hokey, because it sounds like it's just the sound mix of a 2-channel on a CD, and they just take that basic whole music mix and sticking it somewhere on the sidewalls, on the back sidewall channels, and it's not like it's playing a specific, like a bass note in the music score, or a horn, or violins or something. And you can this whole thing is so controversial that how to use it, but at the end of the day, Dolby Atmos is a load of crap.
In the SACT is the only place where you can get this kind of visual feedback that corresponds with audio that's moving around your room.
I don't know, for what it's worth, I might buy that thing.
Handle sounds that are whizzing by your head through the middle of your room and going up and going all over.
So I'll say that again. For what it's worth, I might buy it.
So if you're wondering how well does
look,
with
suddenly
audio
there and
moving around your room. So if you're wondering
it's a glitch in the Matrix.
Atmos handles sound for the toolkit, listen to decoupling. There's really just nothing on the screen but action anyway, so you're just going to be confused. This is one of my favorite sections. Nothing on the screen but action anyway, so you're just going to be confused. This is one of my favorite sections of
no, I don't get confused.
Toolkit. I had a pleasure making it because it was really cool to just kind of dream up of the best.
But does it have Matrix below surround in it? That's what I want to know.
Way to test your specific. I'm using the voice one because this one does move slower.
You haven't moved this thing anywhere down to this level.
It's basically the sound traveling
and underneath. Underneath.
The speakers. So right
because
now
if I was going to do a surround, like I could possibly use Dayton exciters and make a floor surround channel, wooden floor. Simple, easy peasy, but it's designing it, having it put together. I'd have to hire someone that could do woodwork, a chippy or someone, and have a floor specifically built, and could only be so high because I don't want to go too high up, otherwise I'm going to be near the ceiling. So I'll kind of try and move away from, but because I'm using these on the floor surrounds in my room. But if you had a room ceiling height, and it was so high, and you think, I could put a false floor in here, or if you, it's wood floorboards, but you don't want to start messing around with that. You just don't want to, you just got to put another floor in, so you got to secure the base floor or whatever. Or you got to think. You got to think in dimensionality of sound. But a whole lot of film mixes are not going to correspond or relate to the design that you've done, because they don't have that set up even on a dubbing stage, much less the speakers or the channel outputs from the mixing console or whatever. There may be some that do it, and they're probably only aiming at theme parks or simulators or something. So that application's not being used in the cinema, because where's below surround? 10 years of Atmos, okay? 10 years of Atmos. And yet there's no below discrete surround channel. It's like wasting my bloody listening time. Anyway,